Hey folks, Dr. Starr, Silver Spring Medical Center. Thanks very much for tuning in. We'll take about 5 minutes and answer a question of the day. A lot of times we get asked about heavy meals and, why do we feel tired after we have a big meal? Now, this is very appropriate now. We're in the holiday season and people many times are getting together and making a holiday festive meal, which usually involves a lot of heavy foods. And what do I mean by that? Certainly turkey, meat, chicken, fish. These things are generally viewed upon as being a heavier type of meal. How do we know this? Because if somebody has just a salad with fruit and everything else, well, that's a light meal. So conversely, a heavy meal is something that is more quote unquote substantial. And this conversation is not to get into the what you should be eating, although you all know me by now. I will point you in the direction of whole plant foods, but that's just my nature. I want the best for you, and I want you to make sure that you're eating foods that are good for you, not just things that just taste good. And the truth of the matter is, as a side point, it's not a matter of, oh, I can't do this, or I could never eat healthy, or oh, it wouldn't fill me up if I just had, anything other than a piece of dairy or meat or chicken or fish. And believe me, please don't roll your eyes if you think about really what the average American eats. If it doesn't have some kind of heavy component, and what I mean by heavy is, animal products generally are, with the exception of dairy, are only made of fat and protein. Those things are very hard to break down. Your body biologically takes a long time to break down protein and fat, fat being the hardest. It just takes a long time. The foods that are good for you are higher in carbohydrates. Now, wash for a minute from your mind all of the advertisements and the hype that you've heard about as far as, high carb, low carb. That's talking about junk food. That's talking about junk sugars. But if you look at fruits, vegetables, and grains, they are made mostly 80% or more of carbohydrates. Now, nobody's going to make an argument that the sugar, quote unquote, although they've tried, in fruits and vegetables is bad for you. It's never bad for you. It's never, ever bad for you. Unless you're really an uncontrolled diabetic, in which case you have got much bigger problems than eating fruit. You need to obviously cut out a lot of the fat from your diet, and that's what's causing a lot of the diabetic problems. But that's a separate topic. The idea of eating lighter because it's easier to break down and easier to digest, and you feel more energetic, that is something that people should carry with them day to day. When you eat a big meal that's very heavy and high in fat, and people say, well, I eat chicken, I eat turkey, that's not high in fat. Yes, it is. It's 35 to 45% fat. Yes, that's high in fat. All right, anything over 10, 15% fat is considered high fat. If you get into things that are really oily and greasy and things that have added oil, now you're talking 50% or more. Well, if you eat 50% of your diet coming from fat, what do you expect to be? If you eat a lot of fat, you will be fat. That is a scientific proof. That is a fact. That is not my opinion. That is not just the opinion of the doctors in this office. If you eat a high amount of fat and a high percentage of fat, you will be fat. It is that simple. It is that simple. You want to be lower fat, lower the amount of fat that you eat in a day-to-day, meal-to-meal. That is the best advice we can get. Now, trying to eat a low-fat meal is not just good for you, but it's easier to digest. So if you have foods that are very light, it only takes half an hour or a little bit more to break down and move through your stomach. If you eat a steak or a piece of chicken or anything that's high in fat and protein, it will sit in your stomach for as much as 5 or 10 hours. That's the reason why people feel like, well, it's still sitting in the middle of their stomach. Yes, it is. Because the body has to produce a lot of hydrochloric acid to break down the protein. And guess what? The protein is only broken down in the stomach. That's only the place where there's hydrochloric acid, because that's where the body can contain that high acid, that corrosive material. Once it passes out of the stomach, it doesn't get digested anymore. It gets absorbed. Okay, so if you're eating a high fat and high protein meal and you're feeling like you got a concrete, belly, yeah, because your body has to work very hard to break it down. So the idea is lighten up the load, have less fat and protein, more carbohydrates, more fruits, vegetables, and lentils and beans and rice. Those things will digest better, give you better energy, make you feel better. All right, we're at 5 minutes. Have a great day. Hope you learned and hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.